And welcome back to this edition of Newsmaker Live with Laura. If it's Wednesday, it's Newsmaker Live, where we make your story our story. Earlier in the preamble, we spoke about crime. And I asked the question, I posed the question, whether crime was really on the increase. In studio with me are my guests, Superintendent George Nicholas and Sergeant Siobhan Matthew, and they're with the Crime Management Unit of the Royal St. Lucia Police Force. And they're going to talk to us a little bit more about crime. Is crime really on the increase? And if not, why is it that it seems to be so prevalent in our minds? If that crime is on the increase, which crimes are on the increase, and how do they go about managing crime? Welcome, gentlemen. So, Superintendent George Nicholas. How do I refer to you, Superintendent Nicholas? I want to be on my P's and Q's and address you gentlemen in the proper way, because I think that in this world, not just in St. Lucia, not just in our communities, we have become so lax and so relaxed that we don't really show or pay attention to our authority figures. You know, and I think that's perhaps one of the problems that we have in St. Lucia in particular, where we don't, you know, everything is a joke, everything is, you know, lax, and we don't have the respect that we should have, or that we should afford to our authority figures. So how should I address you guys this evening?
Well, generally in the organization we refer to persons by their rank, but for the purpose of the show, George will do just fine for me. George
will do. I think I like the addressing by the rank, so I'm going to remove I'm going to remove that that onus on you, and I'm going to take it for myself. So it's superintendent, super, and sergeant, right? Right. Wonderful. So crime. Is crime really on the increase in St. Lucia? Every week it seems to me that we have one case or another. We're hearing about some slashing, some murder, some shooting, the inner city, you know, yet another murder. And, for instance, for me, what is really striking for me as a woman are crimes against women, gender-based crimes. So can you give us a little bit background, a little bit of a background information as to what are the crime statistics really in St. Lucia at this point?
Well, let me first of all say good evening to you and good evening to your viewers. And I also want to express or echo your sentiments and express my own sentiments to the people of Dominica, and in some cases my condolences to those who have lost their lives. We all know too well in St. Lucia what they're going through, because we have had our own experiences with Thomas and Debbie. But in the face of adversity, Caribbean people always come together, and we always rise from the ashes. So my heart goes out to them. Crime is a problem everywhere in the world, and St. Lucia is no exception. But with the limited resources we have been trying to keep it as low as possible, and each year to reduce it as low as we can. I have some statistics there from the period 1st January to 31st July with a comparison to the same period last year. And what we've seen this year, there's been a general decrease in crime, in the total number of crimes reported. And that decrease is by 7%. Now 7% may be a small figure. And we also have an increased detection rate of 3% over the same period last year. And if I were to just give you a breakdown of the different categories of crime, some of which we have experienced increase, while most of them we have experienced some decrease. Crime against a person, that would mean injuries to somebody, that went down by 1%. Firearm offenses went down by 21%. Offenses against property, that would include stealing, burglary, that went down by 15%. Summary offenses, that would be minor offenses, that went down by 5%. But drug-related offenses, however, went up by 9%. And sexual offenses also went up by 6%.
Now, when you started giving those figures and quoting those statistics, my heart leapt for joy because it seemed that crime really is on a decrease. But then when we got to the drug offenses, and then you're talking about crimes, for me, gender-based crimes, and when we talk about sexual offenses, do you have any idea what the breakdown is versus male versus female? And what exactly do you refer to when you say the sex crimes?
Sexual offenses would range anything from rape, indecent assault, sexual intercourse with a minor, and things of that sort.
Okay. So are we seeing, is it gender-based in terms of women being more the victims and the men being the perpetrators?
Generally, you'd have women being the victims and men being the perpetrators, generally.
And you're saying that's worrisome for me?
It
because I mean, as a female, I have a mother. We all have mothers. I have sisters. I have nieces. I have friends, female friends. And it's just very worrisome to me that in 2015, you would see an increase in those types of crime. However, it pleases me to hear that homicides are down.
Yes, it is. Homicides are down by a significant margin, I would say. Well, the statistics I have covers the period up to 31st July, January 1st to 31st July. And last year, same time, we had 23, and this year we had 15. But as we speak now, we have a total of 17 homicides recorded so far. And in terms of the detection rate, we are doing fairly well. We have solved seven of those.
Out of the 15? Out of the 17? Okay.
And some are within some analysis so that we can determine the way forward.
Are we seeing an increase in the detection rate this year over last year?
Yes, there's a slight increase in detection
over the same period.
Yes.
That's awesome. Now, we talked about drug offenses, and we said that was on the increase. Can we see a correlation between drug offenses and homicides, for instance?
I wouldn't generally say that there's a correlation, but some homicides, based on our investigations, we can conclude that they may be related some way with the drug trade.
But it's not definitive?
No, not definitive.
Okay. Now, explain to us what are the drug offenses? What kinds of crime come under the drug offenses? Is it just carrying a spliff? Is it talking about, what are we talking about when we say drug offenses?
Drug offenses would range from possession of illegal drugs, possession of illegal drugs with intent to supply, cultivation of illegal drugs.
Right. So do we know how much of that is with intent to sell, to supply the drug trade, and how much of it is just maybe petty offense? And would that, the petty offenses, when I say petty offenses, I mean, I have a joint, that's an offense, you know. Would that come under the drug offenses, or would that come under summary offenses?
It would come under the drug offense.
Under the drug offense. Okay, so that could be padded a bit by those.
Yes. Well, for intent to supply, the drug would you'd have to have an amount,
a certain amount
for it to be charged for intent to supply.
Okay, but that all would come under
drug offenses.
Right. So we're seeing increasing, and that worries me, because people under the influence, we know, the mental faculties are impaired. You know, your sense of your judgment is impaired at that point. What will it take the Royal St. Lucia Police Force to get crime under control in this country, particularly as it relates to those where we've seen an increase?
Well, obviously, more resources would help a bit.
When you say more resources, is it a matter of hiring more police officers?
Resources in terms of manpower, machinery, and we also employ different strategies in trying to combat crime. We employ the use of technology, our community policing strategy, we also use our intelligence gathering capacity in order to fight crime. So an increase, if we would be able to augment these areas, it would help tremendously in putting a dent in crime.
Okay, so we talked. You talked about, or you made mention of community policing, and that is something that I've always found quite interesting. I mean, especially in an area where resources are very scarce. You know, our economy is not such that we have the resources to spread around. So you have to use the resources that are available to you. Before we get into community policing, can you tell us what you think about traditional policing? What is our thrust right now in terms of policing? Are we seeing a greater thrust towards the community policing, or are we seeing more of that kind of paramilitary thrust towards policing currently?
Actually, part of our strategic objective of the organization is to have a full community policing program going. But, you know, crime fighting can be from different spheres, and there are occasions where you will have to employ traditional method of policing, and there are times when you have to employ the community policing.
All right.
So
but
it could be a
presently,
combination.
So presently, you're saying that there is a thrust towards marrying the two.
Yes.
Okay.
It has been going on for a while. I'm not sure presently would be very accurate. Yes.
Right. So tell me more about community policing. What exactly is community policing, and how do you use it as a tool? How do you intend to use it as a tool to combat crime?
Well, in a nutshell, community policing is basically getting the community working hand in hand with the police, and not only to solve crime, but to solve other social ills that may be in society. And that's generally what it is, to have the community working hand in hand, for there to be that kind of camaraderie, that kind of relationship between the police and the community, so they can work hand in hand in terms of solving crime and other ills.
In recent past, we've heard a lot of hue and cry about community policing, but we've also heard a lot about communities railing against the police. How do you intend to use community police or restore confidence in community policing? Has community policing really worked for you in the past, and should that be your thrust? Should that really be the direction you're going into?
Absolutely. I think it's the way to go, because without the community, we are more or less helpless. And I think what has contributed to persons or the general public not really embracing the whole concept is maybe our inability to sell the idea, to make it more palatable or more acceptable to them. So I think we are falling short in that regard.
Okay. So you think that generally society, citizens, they don't know what to expect out of community policing? Is that what it is? Because a lot of the time you hear the police going to these communities, particularly with the inner city communities, they go in there and it's guns blazing and, you know, army fatigues. And if we're going the route of community policing, should it not be more, I don't want to use the word camaraderie, because at the end of the day you do not want to dilute the authority, and you do not want to dilute what you are there for, which is protecting and serving, which is coming and restoring peace, right? But at the end of the day, when you come in with your army fatigues and your M16s, and that to me does not engender community policing or the spirit of community.
I quite agree. But you see, again, with the limited resources, it doesn't allow the police to be able to implement the community policing program to the extent that we would like to. So most times we are restricted to more or less responding to crime, as opposed to taking proactive measures to prevent it in the first place.
Now, earlier you mentioned that the communities, maybe you have not sold it well enough to the community so that the communities can embrace it. I prefer a different argument and say that the police themselves do not yet know how to go about community policing. Because when you come in and you start interrogating people, that's not community to me. And I'm from a small community, and I know everybody knows everybody, and everybody knows, okay, this is Mrs. Japia over there, and this is Mrs. Japanel, and they have that kind of the hierarchy, and you know, okay, if a child is doing something bad and one of those elders speaks out, then you know, okay, yeah, you had to be wrong, that kind of thing, or at least you know something went down, and you tend to want to listen. But when the police comes in, and I know I'm belaboring the point, but I really want to see if you had your way. Let's put it this way: if you had your way, and you had command of the force, and you had to implement community policing, forget that it has ever been used before, and then you were to implement it right now, how would you go about it? And what would a community police officer be like?
Okay, we do have programs, community policing related, that works. We have programs, we have officers going to schools, going and lecture to students and so forth in terms of crime preventative measures. We ourselves have our public sensitization drives. But what I'd like to see is for that these programs be sustained over a longer period of time. And that is where the lack of resources can come in. Our resources don't allow us to sustain this program so that it can have the desired effect that we're looking for it to have. So sometimes you find it's only for a short period of time, and then when the program is over, then everything falls flat.
Do you have any communities in St. Lucia where you could say, okay, this is a success story where community policing has been implemented, and you can see, okay, not to say that there's no crime in that community, but the crime detection rate has improved, has increased. You find that people in the community are more willing to open up to the community, to the police department.
Like I said, I think we have had a lot of success stories, but Babunu, for example, comes to mind because of the recency with which the activities have taken place. But those activities have been pointed at groups and schools and organizations within the community. But I'd like to see it trickle down to the ordinary man on the street. And that is where we need to be able to sustain it over a longer period of time. And what the police is to do is more or less facilitate those programs. And the community now have to take ownership so that it can continue.
Okay. Now, I know that there has been a moratorium on hiring police officers, and it is a problem for you guys. You constantly talking about you don't have sufficient police officers, you don't have the resources. I mean, the Leahy law, what with the US and whatnot, that has severely hampered your ability to police. What do you contribute to your successes in terms of crime detection and reducing the amount of crime in key areas such as homicide?
Well, we have implemented several strategies that have worked. Like I told you, we are approaching crime from various angles. We employ the use of technology, our intelligence gathering capacity, but our community policing programs, we must not underestimate that, because sometimes technology may fail you, sometimes you might not always have the intelligence, and we need to have persons coming forward with eyewitness testimony. And that we have been receiving more of that of late, and that probably has contributed to the decrease that we are experiencing. Okay.
We're due for a break. When we come back, we'll hear a little bit more from Superintendent George Nicholas and Sergeant Siobhan Matthew as it relates to crime and the management of crime. See you at the other side of the break.